Hey, I'm Liv Fyland and this is the Assuria podcast channel. In this series, What I Wish I Knew, we are diving into the art of being your own boss without becoming your worst employee. Now, if work-life balance looks like checking your emails at 11 p.m. while binge watching your favourite show, there might be a few tips for you. Let's jump into it. I am with two beautiful business owners in the studio today. Now we have Shasta Stevic from Montu Restorations, and Emily, you are back for another episode, which is so exciting. You've got Vivra, your own business, but also you're an Assuria business mentor.
Correct.
So today, ladies, I want to talk all about failure as being redirection. But first, can you tell me, Shasta, let's start with you, a bit about your business. And I mean, it's so interesting and you've had such a career change. Tell us about Montu.
So I run a restoration and conservation business specialising in the restoration and conservation of antique furniture and objects. Very much a huge career change for me. So before this, I worked in the legal sector, mainly in the employment law space, doing investigations and consulting work with businesses and recovering wages for employees and so forth. But yeah, burnout led me to reassessing my life, and that's how I ended up here.
From law to sawdust.
Yes.
Has quite the ring to it. Now, I actually want to, speaking of the feeling of failure, not actual failure, because I think sometimes consciously we know we're not actually failing, but our subconscious mind makes us feel like we are. Now, not even speaking about your business, what about that transition from law, something that you have worked so hard at, and then going into something that feels more purpose-led and passion-filled? Did you have a sense of failure around that?
Yeah, it's interesting you say, and I did. I remember at the time, when after years of trying to push through the burnout, keep going, I realised that I needed to leave the sector completely. And at the time, it really did feel like a failure. I was unable to do what I'd wanted to do, what I'd studied in, what I was interested in, what I really cared about, helping employees and harmonious workplaces. And so at the time, it did feel like a bit of a failure, that I couldn't hack it. And when I left, I actually didn't have what was next planned. Right. So I didn't leave that to go into furniture restoration. I left that not knowing what was next. And even that maybe felt like a bit of a failure at the time. But in hindsight, that was actually a really powerful and amazing thing because I was in burnout, because I was so stressed and anxious all the time, it was really hard for me to see what options there were or what I might want to do. Yeah. And so I needed a bit of space and time. And I said, I'm going to take 6 months to work out what's next. And I didn't know then that I'd be starting a business. It was just time to, work through some of the burnout and the exhaustion and then, then find what was next. And it just, how things happened,
I think that's such good advice. I think I work with a lot of people in coaching around goals and people want to dive straight into it. And I'm like, okay, first we need to, excuse my language, cut some of the shit. We've got to get some of that noise and we have to create space because you cannot have proper clarity or genuine clarity from a place of burnout and so much noise and clutter. And it can feel like a really indulgent thing to have. Like how many people can quit their jobs and give themselves time or go and have an eat, pray, love moment and come back and they're like, I know what it is. I know my purpose. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that sometimes you do have to cut a cord before you're ready to step straight into the next thing. And so, that's a perfect demonstration of that scenario. But my second question is, who did you feel like you were failing the most?
Yeah, in hindsight, I think it was failing people around me. I was letting people down, bosses. I was letting bosses down. This external image I had of myself, people would judge me. you know, they would think I was a cop-out or, you know, that I couldn't hack it. But I hadn't realised how much value I was putting on all this external validation and not on what was right for me and what did I need and what would bring me joy and what was my passion and what would be satisfying and what would I want to get up for in the morning. And so, yeah, what felt like failing and appearing like a failure was actually my gateway into really getting to know myself and what I needed. So,
God, how many people stay in something for far too long because of that fear of failing. But one of the quotes that I love, and I'm going to butcher this, but it's like, not a quote, but a question to ask yourself. What would I do if it was guaranteed no one would see me failing? And so what it does is like, yeah, we all have a fear of failing. But is it the fear of failing or is it the fact that people would know or there's an audience to see it? Because that's when like our ego comes in. And so if we strip that away, it's like, okay, if we fail, we're like, we gave it a shot. When we know people are watching, that's when we have that fear to put ourselves forward. So I really like asking myself that question of going, okay, what do I actually want? And yeah, people stay in things for so long because they're like, society's telling me this, ego's telling me this, my family, my friends, my partner. And I think something that I really admire about you, Shasta, is just it takes a lot of bravery and courage to walk away from something that you built for so long and that you were really great at, and that is quite prestigious and, you know, law, and it's quite glorified, and to go, you know what, this isn't actually serving me, and that's enough for me to be able to walk away. And so, yeah, I just really admire you, for that. Yeah. And I want to talk to you about how that redirection happened, but first, let's jump over to Emily. Tell me a little bit about what you do and also some moments that felt like failure.
So I've got Vivra, which it's a magnetic belt-free pouch, so it's designed to carry your phone, keys and cash when you're on the go. Predominantly e-commerce-based business, but we have retailers all across the world, international brand. I suppose a time when I have experienced failure, I actually go back a bit in my journey of when I had my first brand. So I had that for 3.5 years, and I remember when I decided to close that up, how that was just so soul-destroying because I'd given so much of my life to it. You know, I mean, I know it was only 3.5 years, but I'd just given, you know, heart and soul to it every day. And I felt at the time that I was admitting that I'd failed, you know, because it didn't work out. And, you know, obviously you build a presence and everyone, all your friends and family and everyone around you is really excited about what you're doing and they support you through it. So not only do you feel like you're failing yourself, you feel like you're failing them as well. Now I look back on it and I think I actually had a lot of courage to say that it wasn't working. It wasn't the right time for me. And in hindsight, if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have gone down to Melbourne and done the things I'd done down there and had a bit of a break for 6 months, regained myself, and then refound, okay, well, now this is what I want to do and this is my next step. So I think sometimes, you know, failure is just leading you in a different direction, and it's hard to see it in the moment. But if you can sit with it and put your ego aside, it can just catapult you into this whole different trajectory.
Yeah. And it does. It feels like our baby.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it feels like it's such a big thing. You're not just going to like throw your baby away kind of thing. So it does, it feels, there's a lot of weight and to walk away from something. So a question that I did want to speak about today, was that notion of knowing when to pivot and when to keep pushing. And when to walk away. So I think that's really important. I think we get told that in business you need a lot of grit, which you do, and we're going to talk about that at some stage. But I also think it's really important to know when something's not working and you have tried and you have kept moving forward, but actually this is no longer for you and it's time to step away. Shasta, you had to do that. in law, and you had to do that with your first business, Emily. So how do you kind of differentiate between what's just hard and you've got to not use, it being hard as an excuse to tap out, and how do you know to walk away?
I think that, it's about listening to your inner voice. And I think, for me with my first business, not only was there a business partner breakdown in that we were just not aligned anymore, so that was number one. It was kind of like, do I just keep banging my head against a brick wall here, or do I just go, it's not working?
Yeah.
I need to move forward. And I think it's just really important to stay true to yourself. And if you can honestly sit there and say, it's just not serving me anymore, I'm not happy, I don't feel like I'm living my purpose, I'm not getting up every day and feeling good about it anymore, all those things are signs that it's time to, step away or give up, and it's not giving up. I shouldn't say that by any means, because it's you will only ever learn from all of that experience. Like, there's so much that I took from my first business into my second business, but I think it's just about being able to listen to that inner voice and say, what is truly making me happy, and is it this or is it not?
Yeah. I also feel like you've spoken a lot about burnout, but sometimes a flare-up of burnout for me, the way I see it, is I lose the passion. And so sometimes not reading into that and going, okay, before I make any rash decisions to walk away from this or close something down, how can I try and rebuild my energy? And then when that rebuilds, if I still don't have that passion and that fire and that purpose and inspiration that I usually feel, and the excitement to work on your business, if that doesn't come back, that's a sign that it's probably run its course, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you say, Shasta, what are some of the moments of failure that maybe you have felt since then starting your business?
It's interesting. One of the things that stands out, which at the time felt a failure, although I didn't feel like it was necessarily my fault. So the first client I had that had come to me through someone else that I'd never met. It wasn't a family member, it wasn't a friend, it wasn't someone introduced to me by someone else. He had wanted me to, he had 5 or 6 pieces of furniture that he wanted worked on. And so I did a quote myself. He accepted the quote. The day before he was due to start dropping off the furniture, he messaged to say there'd been a family situation and he would be in touch. And so this kind of pipeline of work that I expected was no longer there. And I had this real gap in my schedule. And at the time, on paper, it looked like the business was failing, doing bad. I had no income coming in. But what that actually gave me was this beautiful space to focus on my learning and my skills. And less than a month later, another client came to me and one of these beautiful antique pieces restored. And I had space to do it. And also the work that I was going to be doing for this other client, it wasn't proper restoration. It was, it was kind of stripping stuff back and lightening the wood. But I felt that I'd had to say yes because it was income. And so losing that work at the time felt very significant, but it opened up all these other possibilities and potentials. And 6 months later, that client got in touch with me and was apologetic that it had taken so long to get back in touch, but was interested in still proceeding with the work. And by that stage, I was fully immersed in antiques, 17th, 18th century pieces, and that was the direction my business had gone in. And so I was at a place where I had to graciously decline that work, because I didn't have space in my schedule for the work, but B, because the business had gone in a new direction, which
a more aligned direction.
And in hindsight, if I had have thought about it at the time, maybe I would have said no to that work because it didn't align with the direction I was going in, but I'd said yes because of the money.
Yeah.
But it just so happened that fell through and allowed me to realign with what I was doing. So, I think it is really about reframing and also understanding at the time that what may feel like a failure could be an opportunity, and you don't know, and you can turn it into one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think another brilliant lesson that comes out of that is the ability to be able to say no.
Yeah.
And it is so hard when you are in a startup position and you don't have an abundance of work or cash flow coming in. You feel like you have to say yes to everything. But what happens is that your brand gets a bit murky. Like, what do I service and what do I do? And it's hard because you're like, I just need some stability and some income. So yes, I'll contort myself for that, and I'll also be this to you. But the power of actually being able to say no is so powerful, because it says, this is what I'm about, this is what I do. And as much as it feels like you're closing down opportunities, it's wild then what drops in and you're like, oh, was this a big message of this is what I do and these are the people that I accept? And that it's some law of attraction thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on,
I
but
agree.
the ability to say no
Definitely.
is very powerful.
You're so right. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
hugely empowering.
Very tough in the early days.
Very,
Yeah.
very, very tough. I see it with clients all the time.
Okay.
You know, with with mentoring, and you know, it's I feel like I'm constantly instilling in them, honour your worth. You know, what you have to offer is really special, and don't downplay that. You know, yes, you know, it's really, really hard to say no, because a lot of clients just want some money in the door, and getting your first client is such a win. You know, you feel like oh my God, someone believes in me.
But is it
You
your
know,
right client?
But is it your right client? Exactly. So yeah, very important. Agree, knowing when to say no.
Do you have any setbacks or things that really stand out for you, Emily, that were actually positive in the long run?
I think early on, probably the predominant one for me would be that we had someone challenge our patent. So I don't know if you know, but your patent actually is not certified until someone challenges it. And so, you know, I mean, early on in a business, when, you know, we're trying to reinvest every dollar that we earn back into the business, to have to go and then pay for all those legal fees to fight it. But, you know, we just kind of felt like we've got to do this, you know, and then, yeah, now we got our patent certified, and, you know, anyone moving forward who comes at us, it's wonderful to be able to have that behind us. But we weren't, you know, there was no certainty around the fact that we were going to win that. So we took the risk, and yeah, it kind of paid off for us.
It's always waiting for the hindsight to come through. You know, something happens, you're like, am I going to know the reason for this in a week or 6 months or 6 years? And you know, it does come through, and you go, oh, okay, this is why I had the courage to walk away from this, or this is why we got challenged on this. Yeah. Emily, have you had any moments where you have really had to make criticism constructive? Like, I feel like failure and rejection and all these things that we have to kind of become accustomed to in starting a business, because there are so many setbacks and so many no's and closed doors. How do you deal with criticism?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one, because I feel like I've had it on both sides. I've had it from, obviously, you know, going out and trying to sell our product to wholesalers, you know, because it's a new product to market, they don't understand it, so the no's were just no end. But also from a customer perspective as well. I mean, being so on the social media front, constantly, you know, having customers, you know, either give positive feedback and criticise you. The criticism, it's like we listen to the criticism more than the positive. But I suppose we've always just tried to turn it into a positive, and, you know, any criticism, it can be taken in either way, but if you can look at the positive in it, then it can really benefit you as a brand. But I think it's important not to let it bring you down and get you down, and there's always going to be people out there that are going to express their negative opinions, and, you know, when you're out in the ring and you're putting yourself in front of everyone, you're going to receive that. And I think as time goes on in business, you tend to become more comfortable with it.
Yeah. Actually, somebody in a marketing space the other day said to me, no is your most powerful answer. So if people don't like the product that you're putting out there or the service that you're putting out there, instead of then trying to please them and shift, we kind of spoke about this a little bit before, use that to redirect yourself back to the person that is saying yes, and keep serving them, and make it smaller and smaller, your target market, because then you're really serving those particular people in the correct way. Whereas I'm such a people pleaser and I don't deal well with rejection, like I'm just going to put it out there, that those no's are really hard to take.
Yeah.
And I go,
used to it the more the time
let me
goes on,
try and
though.
convince you how good it is and that you need this thing or this product. And instead I should be like, yeah, you can keep going and living your life. That's okay. We don't need to like the same thing. Emily, you're loving my product. How can I keep serving you more? So, you know, I think taking that criticism and saying, I can't please everybody. How can I keep pleasing the people that actually want my service? Have you had much criticism or anything to deal with in your line of work?
Thinking about that, I think the biggest critic is the one in my head.
Right.
You know, that has been a huge thing to overcome. And I think as much as learning how to grow a business, I've had to spend a lot of time really getting to know myself, really understanding myself, you know, what my limits are, what my boundaries are, and cutting myself some slack in the process. And I remember reading an interview, an article where they interviewed a very successful entrepreneur many years ago, and she said as a child, on Friday nights when they'd have family dinner, they would go around the table and the question would be, what did you fail at this week? And it was just this beautiful reframe of failure into something to be proud of, something to own.
That's cool.
And something to acknowledge. And I think that's a real issue with society these days. You know, we kind of see, we fear the judgment that comes from failure rather than there being a celebration or acceptance or normalising failure. And so, yeah, that really sticks with me. And whenever I feel like I failed at something, I just imagine sitting around a table and really being proud of and owning that failure as part of my growth and my learning.
What makes you more resilient, you know? I mean, and that's, I think, so important in business is just constantly being resilient and persistent.
And human.
And human.
I think that's what we need to keep checking in with. It's like,
Absolutely.
it's so human. And I almost like the shift that is happening a little bit. Like, say we take social media, for example. I feel like what is trending quite a lot at the moment is founder journeys and realistic behind the scenes and people kind of showing the full spectrum of what it takes to build a business, for example. And I think that's important because, it is glorified that it is overnight success or there aren't all these failures along the way or mini failures every single day. But that is helping you pivot and rebuild and the opportunities that leads to. And I think the more that gets spoken about, people go, oh, great. Okay, so they also are having struggles or failures or, you know, setbacks, and they're still successful in my eyes, or they're still doing well, or they've still got sales. And I think it just gives us a moment to breathe out and be like, oh, we're all human. And, you know, you can be human and be successful.
And it's part of it. You can't have success without failure, you know?
Yeah.
If you're not failing, you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough and you're not growing really. So,
Can we tie it together with what felt like failure when you were burnt out and you needed to walk away from your career to where you are now? Like, how grateful are you?
unbelievably. You know, and then sometimes now it's hard not to feel like the failure was not leaving that career earlier.
Interesting.
But I think it all had to happen at the time it happened. But and this whole process has really kind of solidified that new way of looking at what failure is. I mean, the word is not a dirty word. It's this really kind of amazing thing to be able to experience because of the growth and the resilience. And I am just grateful for everything that's happened.
I love the way you have reframed it. And I think that's really something that I'm going to take away from this, of trying to practice embracing it more, whether that's conversations at night with family or friends, and just, making it something that we're not terrified, because it has such a negative connotation with it at the moment. Emily, as a mentor, how do you coach people through navigating failure?
I think that I always try and share my experiences of failure, because I feel, I'm a big believer in vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And I think that if they can see that I've had failures and that I have walked that road before, that they can feel it's okay for them to fail along that journey as well, and also reassuring them that it's okay to fail, like what we've been saying,
And almost expected.
Yeah, absolutely expect it, and it's going to give you all the strength and the resilience and the persistence and the further belief in what you're doing. And I feel that if someone was talking to me about their failures, I really would try and empathise with them, listen to them, reassure them that it's okay, and I suppose share my experience about what failures I've experienced, and that, I feel like that's a really bad answer, sorry.
No, I think it's a good one to mention that as a mentor, having that vulnerability and breaking down that wall is really important. So I think that's a great answer. And
I also think it is really powerful to share your own stories.
Yeah.
When people get to hear about other people's failures, that just makes them realise they're not alone,
Yes.
and that, maybe brings them out of that shame spiral or whatever it is they're feeling. One of my favourite podcasts is called How to Fail with Elizabeth Day, and she interviews people, and each episode is a different interview with someone, but they talk about 3 of their failures. They have to talk about 3 of their failures in life. And so I think hearing other people's failures is so powerful. So the fact that you share your failures with people is really
Yeah, I mean, I
special.
often, when I'm having conversations with my mentees and I do share things that I've failed at, I feel it's, you can feel someone's whole demure change, in that it's like, oh, wow, okay, it's all right for me to fail, and having that comfort, and that I think also knowing that there's someone there on their side who's there to catch them, and that we're here to work through it together, and we'll get through it together, is really, a pretty cool thing.
well, it gives exactly what you were talking about before. It gives you the confidence to go out and take more risks.
Yes.
Because on the other side of risk feels like more opportunity to fail.
Yeah.
But if it's like, okay, that's all right, and that it's a lot more normalised, I now have the confidence to go and take those risks, which are either going to lead to, a little bit of a setback and a pivot, or they're going to lead to the next stage and growth, and that's the only way to move forward, I suppose.
Yeah, I think when I first started out with my initial brand, I was, I wasn't aware of the self-employment assistance program, because I actually did it myself when I did my first business. And when I found it, and I still have my mentors today from the program. Yep. And they are my people, and they'll always be my people, and they're so on my side. I feel emotional talking about it, but it's to know that you're not alone, because being in business can be such an incredibly lonely journey at times, because you are taking massive risks, and to have someone on your side is pretty amazing.
What a full circle moment for you. Is that why you were so keen to become a mentor yourself?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. I just, I knew how much my mentors had given to me. And as I said, when I first started out, I had to Google. I was trying to find where can I find a mentor that's not going to charge me thousands and thousands of dollars just for their time, but that could give me their time, having walked the journey, and help me figure out what steps I need to take to get this thing off the ground, because I've got the vision and I've got the persistence and everything else, but I just need some direction.
Yeah, and I think what you said, it is so lonely in business, so just even not to feel alone while you're taking those risks and those big leaps. So I think this has been such a beautiful conversation, one that needs to happen really regularly when you are entering business and expecting that rejection and failure and needing to get back up time and time again. So thank you so much for sharing your stories and helping reframe failure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now, if you guys want to find out more about Assuria and the Workforce Australia Self-Employment Assistance Program, check the show notes or head to Assuria, asuria.com.au/podcast.
This podcast was recorded on Gadigal land. We acknowledge the First Peoples of Australia and pay respect to elders past and present. We honour their ongoing connection to land, waters, culture and community, and extend that respect to any First Nations peoples listening today.